Hey, so I don't know if you guys have heard this while this entire other news cycle has been going on, but Brian Mast has proposed a bill wherein it would give Marco Rubio, or whoever the Secretary of State is, the right and the responsibility, the obligation to revoke certain citizens' passports. I didn't want to freak out until I read it for myself. I've read it for myself, and we have a problem, and I think we need to talk about it. For starters, this isn't new, right? The Passport Act of 1926 centralized the passport authority in the Secretary of State. It said that the question of passports is federal, and it's the Secretary of State that will grant them. And typically, they are granted, right? You get a passport. You're a United States citizen, you get a passport, because freedom of movement is part of that whole life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness bit, the foundation upon which all of this was built. And I don't know if you know this, but it's authoritarian countries that typically will restrict their citizens' movement. Think Berlin. They literally built a wall to prevent their citizens from traversing to the other side. Think Russia. Think North Korea. That's the type of government that you think of when you think restricting citizens' access to the outside world. And so while this authority already exists, typically it has been exercised in very, very few circumstances, very limited circumstances, like you owe child support. Hey, if you don't pay that child support, it's going to become a burden on the state. That child and its financial needs become a burden on the state, so you can't leave until you pay your child support. Tax evasion, same thing. Espionage, that kind of, speaks for itself. But these are the very limited circumstances wherein they typically have either canceled or revoked or not granted a passport. And what this bill does, HR 5300, which by the way has over 700 sections, and this bit about the Passport Act is amending the Passport Act is number 226. What this does is it expands the ability of the government to restrict our travel, our ability to leave the country. So Section 226 of HR 3500, no passports for terrorists and traffickers. Let me start with the easy one first, traffickers. Very random, very random. I don't know why this was thrown in, but you have to be convicted of a trafficking offense, and that's very simple, right? To determine if it happened or not. Were you convicted? Were you charged and convicted with a trafficking charge? But I want you to know how easy it is to get a trafficking charge in most states. 4 grams of an opioid in your possession, trafficking. 4 grams. I'm talking 30 pills, 30-ish pills. Let's say you've got a bottle, it's not yours. A friend gave it to you, you got it off your grandma, whatever, of Oxy. That's trafficking. It doesn't matter whether you meant to use it for yourself or you meant to pass it on to someone else. That's trafficking. Also, it doesn't matter how much of the active substance is in the pills. It includes the fillers. It could be very, very, low concentration, but if it's 4 grams, it's 4 grams, and now you're a trafficker because you're in possession of a trafficking amount. 25 pounds of weed or 10 pounds of weed, depends on the state, also a trafficking amount. They're not contemplating exclusively like big traffickers like narcos. It's some guy who got stopped with a bottle of his grandma's Oxys. But okay, all right, let's move on. The terrorist bit is nebulous. This is black and white, the trafficking bit, but the terrorist bit, intentionally nebulous, because it leaves it open for them to make up the rules as they go along and expand what it means as they go along. So as it stands right now, it says that they want the Passport Act of 1925, or 1926, which is the original act that confers upon the Secretary of State the authority to handle passports. They want to add to the end of it the following: Section 4, authority to deny or revoke passports to individuals providing material support for terrorism. These are two things we have to define. Lucky for us, the term material support means the provision of any property, tangible or intangible, or service. This is why it's nebulous. They get to define, well, hold on. Well, no. So they get to define what service is. Is it speaking up on behalf of? And who's going to define whether or not my speech is actually speaking up on behalf of what you're saying is a terrorist organization? Because you know what they don't do? They don't define terrorist organization. So they get to just say what it is. Mahmoud Khalil was said to have been what? Aiding, abetting, assisting, providing service to, promoting a terrorist organization, when we know what he was doing. He was advocating for his people. And the government said, nope, terrorist. If we knew that he was going to be a terrorist, we wouldn't have let him in here. And that's the problem. They get to define what a terrorist organization is, and they get to invent it, really. Because how many of you guys have watched the videos of the old people in wheelchairs in the UK being arrested for protesting? And they're accused of being members of a terrorist organization. They get to define it as they go along. How long do you think it's going to take for them to start saying, I don't know, that the Boy Scouts of America are a terrorist organization? If they start advocating for something that they don't want them to be advocating for, how long before they say that the Boy Scouts are a terrorist organization? Do you see where this is going? Now, I will say this. Under subsection F, rule of construction, it does say that nothing in this section may be construed or applied so as to abridge the exercise of rights guaranteed under the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States, or to limit the Secretary's ability to revoke a passport. Which one of those things are they going to pay attention to? They've shown us time and time again that they don't care about our speech, our free speech right. They get to determine what is speech and what is not. And that's all she wrote. That's all she wrote. And when you keep it open-ended like this, giving one guy, right now Marco Rubio, the authority to determine what is and is not providing material support to, and what is and is not a terrorist organization, you are inviting absolute calamity, catastrophe. Ask yourself why they would want to lock those people in. Why do you think that so let's say someone is advocating for a cause that they've now determined is a terrorist cause. Wouldn't they want that person to just leave? Get out of here. Get out. Ask yourself why they want to lock them in. It's something that it's getting their foot in the door. Because if they think that they can get broad support by using a buzzword like terrorist and trafficker, if you allow that, the other stuff's just going to come. They'll continue to modify. They'll continue to change the definition of terrorist organization, which is why it's not included in the bill. They will continue to expand it until before you know it, you got to get a permission slip to leave the country. Fuck a passport. If you don't get a permission slip each time you want to leave, regardless of whether or not your passport has not been revoked yet. This is not going the way any of you thought it would. I'm trying not to be an alarmist, but the writing continues to be boldly written on the wall, and I don't know what it's going to take. Like, how are we letting them continue to do this? If they start to restrict people's access out of this country, again, ask yourself why? Why? And they are and have been brokering deals to censor us on these apps. Where do you think this is going? Any students of history out there? Where do you think this goes?